So when you listen to a podcast, you hear that cool pre-recorded intro. You know what I'm talking about. Well, you're going to need one if you're starting your own podcast. But how do you even do that? And where do you start? Don't worry, I got you covered in this next episode. Hey, it's Jennifer Lee, and I have over 10 years of experience in the world of broadcasting. I have worked as a radio DJ, as well as a traffic helicopter reporter. And in the last year, I've gotten into podcasting. I'm currently working with the Home Builders Association of Vancouver on their podcast, Measure Twice, Cut Once, helping homeowners renovate and build their home right the first time with my lovely co-host, Michael Friedman. And I also edit the podcast as well. If you ever need my help or any services to do with podcasting, please check out my website, podcastconsulting.ca. But for now, enough about me. Let's get down to our topic. How do you make a pre-recorded intro for your podcast? Well, you're going to have to start somewhere. And how do you do that? Don't worry, I'm going to help you right now. So first and foremost, you're going to want to do your research. Find different podcasts in your topic. So take a look. So if you're a marketing podcast, go listen to the top marketing podcasts. What I do is I just Google top marketing podcasts, see what flies up, and listen to the intros. And take a second, be like, okay, how many voices are in the intro? Is the voice different from the person hosting the podcast? What are they saying in the intro? How are they hooking me to listen to this podcast? These are the things that I want you to think about when doing your homework. Write it down on a sheet about what you liked about the intro. Did you like the voice that was talking to you? Did you find them engaging? Did you find what they were saying adding value to your life? Did it make you want to pick their podcast and listen to it longer? These are the questions you got to ask yourself, because this is what you're going to need to do for your very own intro, because you're going to need to get yourself some listeners for your podcast. So research. That's all I can say. And it's so easy now with the internet. You just pick the different podcasts you want to listen to, and then you listen to their intros and see how they do it. The next step is writing a pre-recorded intro. I honestly would not make this any longer than 30 seconds. You can make it a little bit longer. If you have to make it to a minute, I would say cut it at a minute. But 30 seconds, I think, and this is my own personal opinion, is the key, because you should be able to hook people in 30 seconds to why they should be listening to your podcast and why they should listen any further to this next episode. So you really want to make sure that you hook people into listening to your podcast in 30 seconds. Seems tough, but I know you can do it. Then the next step is figuring out who is going to record your pre-recorded intro. Who is going to voice it? There are two different ways you can do this. You can, as the host, can do the pre-recorded intro, which I really do like that option, because you as the host is going to make the intro more personable. And you're going to be able to tell people from your own words why they should be listening to your podcast. And they're going to be able to get your vibe and figure out who you are in those 30 seconds and why they should listen. So for the podcast I'm doing with the Home Builders Association of Vancouver, my lovely co-host and I, Michael Friedman, actually do the intro for our podcast, Measure Twice, Cut Once. So here's the example. Welcome to Measure Twice, Cut Once, the podcast from Haven, the Home Builders Association, Vancouver.
From code to closets,
safety to skylights,
we'll take you behind the walls and all things home building and renovation.
And give you the ins and outs from the experts on what you should know.
In plain language.
About home building, design, and renovation.
I'm Mike Friedman.
And I'm Jennifer Lee. Now that you're here, why not hit subscribe and you'll never miss an episode.
And don't forget to share with your family, friends, or anyone else you know who might be thinking of a project in their home now or in the future. Right away, you can tell who Mike and I are, what our personalities are like in those 30 seconds, and what information you're going to be getting, and who is putting on this podcast, which is the Home Builders Association of Vancouver. So you should be listening to this podcast if you want to know the ins and outs to building or renovating your home. So another option for the recording of your pre-recorded intro is getting someone you know to voice this. I'm lucky that I have a lot of professional broadcasting friends, so I was able to get one of them to voice my podcast intro for Coping-19, which is a podcast about entrepreneurs and how they're dealing with the pandemic and positively pivoting their businesses during this time. And so I got my friend to pre-record the intro. And here is an example of Coping-19's intro done by my friend and broadcaster Bianca Selterbeck.
Welcome to the Coping-19 Limited Series podcast, a positive look at how entrepreneurs are coping with this COVID-19 pandemic, what they're learning from this situation, and how they're changing their business practices to accommodate this new world. And now here's your host, Jennifer Lee.
So if you want a professional voice like that, they're actually not that expensive. You can also go onto sites like Fiverr and Upwork. And I saw people doing voiceovers for about like 13 Canadian. So keep in mind, this is going to be a one-time cost because they're going to do your intro and outro for you. And then you don't need to get them to record it all the time unless you change something, like say you change a different format of your podcast down the road, or if you're going to do something different, if you have different seasons to do with your podcast, but you can basically cross that bridge when it comes to it. But it's a great way to get a crisp, professional sounding voice on your podcast and make you sound like a pro as well. So highly recommend that option as well. But before you go, make sure you subscribe to the button below, and then all you have to do is hit the bell for the notification, and we're done and out. See you again.